Hi guys, and welcome to the next video in the May 2023 exam paper series. In this video we're going to be looking through how to create the queries and the reports required for question 3. So we're going to first start off with how we get into the query side of the database. In order to create a query, we're going to go up to our create option on our ribbon, and you'll see that we've got a few options up here. We've got the ability to create tables, queries, forms, and reports. So in this instance, we're going to go to the queries area here. What I'd ideally suggest we do is go into the query design option, which is this one here, and we should really start here because this will allow us to create our queries from a straightforward level rather than relying on the query wizard to actually make them for us. So if we double click and open this, you'll see that we go into the query design view. Notice we've got this grey area here, and this is where we are going to place the tables that we want to use the fields from to create our query. Notice at the moment it is blank, and in order for us to be able to add the tables, we can do a couple of things. As you noticed over here, I've got my add tables option, and that's going to show the tables that we've got in this database today. However, if this area is not displayed, if you look on your query design, you'll see that there's this button here that says add tables. This will allow you to toggle on and off to show the tables that are inside of the database. So I'll just show you that now, and you can see that once I click it off, it will disappear, and click it on, it should reappear. So the tables that we're going to be playing around with for the first query, query A, is the model and the manufacturer tables themselves. So we're going to go over to our table area, and we're just going to drag in the manufacturer table. And we can click and hold and drag that over, or we can do like I'm going to do on the models, is just double click and it should add it in for us. Notice obviously we've got the scroll bar here. That's just because there's more fields inside of this table here than's being displayed. If you want to see them all, if you just go to the bottom and drag, you should be able to see all of the field areas inside of that table. Now, if we look at the question that we've been asked to do, we've been asked to create a query to display a sorted list of models that have no more than 2 bedrooms, have double glazing. It must display only the manufacturer name, the model name, and the number of bedrooms from highest to lowest. So that tells me a few things when we go into these queries. It tells me what areas we need to make sure that we're including inside of the outputted query. That also shows to me as well that there might be other fields that I want to use that I don't want to necessarily display to the user. So the first one we're going to play around with is actually getting the manufacturer name. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the manufacturer's table, and I'm going to click on the manufacturer name. If I double click on that, notice it's now put it down on the bottom here for me to have a play around with later on. We can, if we wanted to, we can drop down on these little drop downs here what table we're going to play around with and what field we want to choose from the selected tables above. But I prefer to actually just double click inside of the tables up here. So we need to know the model name as well. We've been asked to show that. So I'm just going to double click and drag that one down there. And then I want to show the number of bedrooms that are also inside of the model. So I'm going to double click on that one there as well. Now, it did ask in the question that we're looking for all of the caravans that have double glazing. So we need to make sure that we're choosing this option as well. But as I said earlier on, it didn't ask us to display this. And I'm going to show you how we can make it so that when we run this query, we're not showing that element in a second. Now, what we've also been asked to do in our query, if you look closely, it says that we should look for all the models that have no more than 2 bedrooms and have double glazing. So that means that all of the caravans that are between 1 and 2, we want to see. We don't want to see anything with more than that. And also, we want to see if they've got double glazing. So I'm going to go down to my area here, and this is where we can start to customize our queries. We can actually put some criteria inside of these queries to do something for us. So I'm going to click on where it says criteria, as we can see from this row along here, and I'm going to go onto the bedrooms section. And we can put in a couple of options. We can put in here, like we did inside of our validation rule inside of the creation of the tables, we can type in between 1 and 2. Now, I always, as a rule of thumb, like to just try something and then see what happens in terms of the outputted response. That tells me that I can see whether I need to adjust that. What you can find if you try and do lots of things at once, you might confuse yourself if something breaks as to what worked and what didn't work. So just do one bit at a time. Check, come back, check, and come back again. So I'm going to click on Run, and I'm going to say that I have an option that says to create a cross-tab query, you must specify one row or more headings in one column heading and a value option. That tells me that I've obviously clicked on something here and I'm not expecting this to happen. And I can see if I look up on the top of my query design, I've accidentally got cross-tab. I just want to use a select query here. So I'm just going to click on that, and then that gets rid of that extra element that we've got down the bottom. If I now run the query, you'll see that I've got some outputted options here. So I'm resolving my issues as I go along. And this is something that could happen to you in the exam. So if you do see something like that, you've got the experience and the know-how how to change it. Don't panic. Obviously, just reflect, look around what you've got on your screen, and then you might need to change some settings here and there. So I'm going to go back into the design view because I don't want to show, let's just going to run it again. I don't want to show the area where the double glazing is showing to the user. I don't want to see that. But if we notice the data that we've actually got out of this, the data shows that there is one caravan that doesn't have double glazing. So it tells me here that I need to actually make some criteria happen in this area as well. So I'm going to go back to the design view, and I'm going to go back down to where it says double glazing. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is on the option for show, I'm going to untick it. Okay, so I'm just going to untick it and then run it again, and we can see that we've got rid of that extra query area or the extra field area in my query here. Let's go back into design view again, and now we're going to go to the criteria. Now, it's quite a simple option, this one. It's going to allow us to either show it, where it's a tick or a not, so that's a binary yes or a binary no. So a true or a false, or 1 or a 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the criteria that I'm only going to show those double glazing ones where it's yes. So I'm just going to type in yes and then run. And we can see that we've got rid of that extra option down there where it didn't have the double glazing. Now notice that there is still some element that we need to do. And this is something where you might fall foul of overlooking or overseeing it because you've managed to achieve the primary goal of getting only the caravans that have got the double glazing. But just look closely. We're also asked to make sure that we sort the bedrooms from the highest to the lowest, as was asked in the question. So what we need to do is go back into our table design, or our query design, sorry, and we're going to choose the option where it says sort underneath the bedrooms area, and we're going to do it from descending. If we now run that, we can see that we've got it going from the highest, which was what it was asked for, down to the lowest. When you do your question for the actual exam, you're going to need to obviously show your screenshot of your outputted query, and you may also have to show a screenshot of your design view for your query as well. So don't forget to include both of those when you do your first query, and even your second and third queries potentially. So we're just going to click on and save this now. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to click save. And as we did with the tables in our previous video, we need to make sure that we're using the correct prefix. Now in this query, we're going to use QRY, and then I'm just going to put an underscore and I'm going to do question 1. You need to call it whatever you think is appropriate. I do believe that you might need to do it as something like caravans with double glazing, or whatever you choose. Just in this example, I'm just going to put question 1 so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to click on OK on that one, and it'll add it to our little access on all objects over here in the queries area. So that should allow us to then have the first of our 2 main queries that we've got to create in question 3 done. And we're going to now move on to the next one. You will always find in the exam that you'll have one query that is more straightforward, and then you'll have one query that's more advanced. We're going to move on to the next query now. I'm just going to close this one down, and I'm going to go and create a new query design. just double checking, just in case I clicked it again like I did before, the cross tab. I'm just making sure it's on the select query. And we're going to go in here. Now let's look at the question. The question's asked us that we have to, for each caravan sale, is given a rating. If the actual sale price is more than £500 below the advertised sale price, then the rating is poor. Otherwise, the rating is good. So already I'm looking at this from a programming point of view as an if statement. If it's true, then show this. If it's not, just show that. We're going to need to create a query to display. Here we go. We've got an idea of what we're going to have to output to our users. A query to display the rating for the caravan sales when there is a difference between the advertised sale price and the actual sale price. We've got to calculate, so we've got an idea that there's a calculation inside of this query, the difference between the advertised sale price and the actual sale price. And we're going to calculate the rating. Then we've got that extra section below that tells us, excellent, all the things we need to display. So we're going to need to display the caravan ID, the advertised sale price, the actual sale price, the difference between the advertised sale price and the actual sale price, and the rating. So straight away, I know that I'm going to need to use the caravan table and the sales table. So I'm just going to add these to my query area. So I've got my caravans, and then I've got my sales. So let's just go back through and have a little look. We need to put in the caravan ID. So I'm just going to click on the caravan ID first. Then I've been asked to do the advertised sale price. So that's in this table over here, and there's the advertised sale price. We've also been asked to put the actual sale price in. Fantastic. And then we're asked to do the difference between the advertised sale price and the actual sale price. Well, obviously I've not got these fields in either of these tables here. And the rating. So these are telling me that I'm needing to create extra fields down in the bottom of my query down here that will do calculations and give me ratings. So I'm going to have to do some manual input in here. So let's move straight on to the difference. Now, what we could do in the field area down here is we can actually stipulate and specify our own field heading in the query. So we need to know the difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in difference into the actual heading area for my query. So the next bit I need to do is put a colon. So that is now, for all intents and purposes, the heading that will display inside of the columns or above the columns for anything that's going to be underneath it. So let's see if I can run it and show you what it looks like. It's going to ask me to save. No, because we haven't completed this. So don't worry. What we'll do is we'll see it in a second once we've done all of our calculations. So we did get a little hint as to the calculations we need to do. So the difference between the advertised sale price and the actual sale price. So that's telling me I'm going to do a calculation where I'm taking the sale price and subtracting that away from the original advertised price. And that should give me a value. So how do I do that? How do I capture that data? So what we want to do is we want to target these two field areas here in our query. Now I can capture that data by entering a square bracket and then putting exactly the name inside of this one here, inside of these square brackets. So I'm going to type in advertised underscore sale price and then I'm going to do square bracket. So that's capturing that value inside of that field. Then I want to subtract from that the actual sale price. So I'm going to go square bracket and I'm going to type in the field headings for that. So actual underscore sale price. Now, please be careful that you don't mistype something here because you can present yourself with a problem, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. So we've now got this calculation in here, if you wish. I'm just going to drag that over so you can see it a bit better. And let's run it. Let's see what happens when we run that. So here we go. We can see that, yes, we are advertised sale price for caravan 1 was originally £28,000. It actually sold for £26,500. So that's a difference of £1,500. That works out about right, doesn't it? If you're not too sure on your maths and you're panicking in the exam, don't worry, let's go for the easier one. We can go 24,000 minus 23,500, we're left with 500. So that tells me that that's working exactly how I'd like it to. So at this point, we'll move on. We'll go back into the design view, and we're going to move on to the next part. So the next part is where we want to create the rating system. Now, when you do your units for programming or anything like that, you slowly get your head into the space of a programmer, and you start to look and hear words and you think, oh, that's an if statement. So for example, as it says there, that if it's at the beginning of the question, isn't it? If the actual sale price is more than £500, then advertised sale price in the rating is poor. Otherwise, if the rating is good. So I know that I'm going to need to create my first if statement. Now, like I did in the previous field area here, I want to put in a heading. So I'm going to put in the heading. We've already been told what sort of heading it could be. It's going to be ratings. So I'm going to put in rating and colon. So now I need to set the if statement for us to be able to do the comparison. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in if, and then we're going to do a curly bracket, and then we're going to do our square bracket. Okay, so the curly bracket is so that we can put our parentheses in, and the square bracket is so that we can put in a field from any one of these ones here. Now, just because we've created our own field here doesn't mean that we can't call it into here. So we do exactly how we did it before with the advertised sale price. This time we're just going to target difference. So if difference, and then we're going to do the close of the square bracket, is greater than 500 as a value. We don't type in then inside of our queries. What we do is we use a comma, and then we're going to put in some speech marks, and then this is where we're going to put our value if it's greater than 500. So if it's greater than 500, we want to put poor. So I'm just going to put in the word poor and then close the speech mark. Then I want to have my else. So if it's more than 500, then show this, else or otherwise, so comma, show this. So you probably guessed it, after the comma I'm going to put a speech mark, and I'm going to put in good. I'm now going to close the speech mark, and then I'm going to close the parentheses so that I know that I've got it all encapsulated nicely inside of those nice rounded brackets. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go up to the run options to see what happens. So here we go. So we can see there that, yep, that one was massively over £500, so it's poor, and these ones are on £500. So let's just do a little bit of playing around here. Let's just check to see that if it was equal to £500, then we want it to be poor. Okay, so in here, in our code, in our commands here that we've put down, if we put greater than and equal to £500, then it's going to be poor. Let's see what happens. There you go. Look, we can see that that's worked. So we know that if we want to be specific to the £500 included into the poor bracket, then we'd need to put the equals. But we don't need to do that. We just need to make sure that we are only putting the value where it says in the question that is priced more than £500 below. So let's go back to the design view and delete that equals sign out of there. So I'm pretty happy with how that's outputting at the moment, but we only want to show the ones. So I'm only going to show the ones where there is a value where it's greater than 0 here. So I'm just going to go back into the design view here, and I'm going to go down to criteria, and I'm going to put in a greater than symbol 0. So what that should do is it should get rid of the ones where they sold for the same price, because it does say show all of the caravans where the price is more than £500, given the rating of good, or other than that, do less than. So I'm just going to click on run here, and we've got some good outputs there. So that should allow us to create our second of the two queries. You can see there it's a little bit more complex than the previous one. We're using a bit of if, and we're also creating new field headings here. So like I said to you earlier on, we've got the difference and the rating ones. These aren't in our tables. We're creating these in our query so that we can use them for our purposes to show specific criterion. So I'm just going to, again, right click on here. I'm going to click on save. I'm going to click on and type in QRY. Doing underscore, and I'm just going to do this question 2. Click on save, or click on OK, and then we're done. So like before, what we need to do is show a screenshot of our outputted result, and also a screenshot of our created query in design view. So now that we've done the two queries, we're going to move on to the actual report side of question 3. So we're now going to move on to the report stage of question 3, where we've been asked to create a report that shows a list of the models, and for each of the manufacturers we need to calculate the total number of the models that they have, and also to calculate the total number of the models that have double glazing. In the report we've been asked to make sure we display appropriate report title, a manufacturer name, the manufacturer model name, the number of people the model sleeps, the number of bedrooms, and whether the model has double glazing or not. We also, as it says there, need to show the total number of models for each manufacturer and the total number of models that the manufacturer has that's got double glazing. So in order for us to do that, we're going to jump straight into the create option. And in this instance, it's actually easier to use the report wizard. The nice thing about this is we can choose from a multitude of different tables and get the data out of it in the wizard itself and create our report so that we can then go back in and customize it in the design view. So let's go through that list of areas that we need to display. So the first one is that we need to display the manufacturer name. Now I'm going to go straight into the manufacturer's table, and I'm going to grab that and pop that into my selected fields by choosing the single option here. I'm then going to go into the option for the models, and I'm going to grab the model name, the number of sleeps, the bedrooms, and the double glazing. If you accidentally add an extra field in that you didn't want to, say for example I added in the model ID, you can use these arrows just to move them back in and out of the pot for the selected fields. So I'm happy with what we've got here. I'm going to click on next. Now the next area shows that we can group by manufacturer name. It's put it up there. So when we get into the actual report itself, what will show is the manufacturer, and then it will show the models underneath the manufacturer name that it actually does, and then it'll move on to the next manufacturer name and show the models that that one does, and so on. So we're going to leave that as it is at this time, and we're going to click on next. We're not going to play around with any additional grouping here, and we're just going to click on next, and then we're going to click on next again, and we're going to choose the stepped, and I'm going to choose the landscape layout here just to make sure that it's nicely laid out. I'm going to click on next, and then before we go anywhere, it says what title do you want for your report. Now it's worth adding to any explanation here that you are awarded points for how you present your report. If you leave it with the default of TBL_manufacturers, that's an oversight that you could lose marks on. So what you're going to need to do is make sure that you give an appropriate title for your report. Now in this one, I'm going to put in here that I want to show the manufacturers, the manufacturer and model. Before we get to the finish point here, we're not going to preview, we're going to go into modify the report's design. I'm going to click on finish, and we can see we've got the layout of our report ready, but it is quite small, and we can drag it out by clicking on the edge of the actual report here, and we can make it larger. so that we can then start to play around with some of these field headings that we've got here that we're displaying. It's worth noting as well that over here it's not got the prefix that we should be having, so we need to go and change this later on to make sure it's something like RPT underscore then manufacturer model. But notice we do have our heading here that doesn't say table underscore manufacturer, it's got manufacturer model. We will obviously address any of the spelling mistakes I've got up there at the moment, or we could just change it completely. Now, any element inside of this report is able to be customized in one way or another. We can click on it and we can see that if we go over to the property sheet, if you've not got that, again, look in the ribbon, you'll see that it turns itself on and off, and you can add that. And you can go to the format and you've got a plethora, an absolute extensive range of options that you could play around with here. I personally wouldn't jump too deep into this in the exam. You just want to get the question and the answers done to the best level you can. This is not going to get you any extra marks for changing it to look like the best report ever, but you do need to make sure that you make some customization in terms of the naming and the layouts and whether there's enough space inside of a text box, just so that that meets the needs for the users that are going to use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to address this issue here where I've got text box labels that are probably too small, and also they've got these little underscores in there because obviously they're pulling that data through from the tables. So I'm just going to click in individually, and I'm going to click on here and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So oh, look, we can see there that we actually do have things that are overlapping. That's not a bad thing to show in this instance. It's quite a good thing, a little happy accident, because what we can do is select it, and if you look, we've got this little grey block up here that's very big in comparison to the other handles around. If you click and hold and drag that over, that drags the entity along on its own. So if we click on here, you can click on that grey bit and then just drag it over there and make it bigger. There you go, and that's our double glazing one. And then our bedrooms, make that a bit bigger. And then sleeps, make that bigger again. And I'm moving these over here because I want to give myself some space to add those additional fields that we need to create that have to go inside of our report, to do with how many of the model each manufacturer has, or how many models the manufacturer manufactures, and also how many of those do have double glazing. So I'm going to put some additional labels in a second, but I'm just going to go through in here. I'm just going to go on these labels. If you do want to adjust it, you can just double click and get inside of the label, take out the space there, put a space in, and I think I'm going to leave the manufacturer heading bit there as well, because that's nicely positioned over under heading for manufacturer. So again, like we did in the query side of things, we're just going to click on view, see what it looks like, see what adjustments we've made. Yep, that looks okay, it's laid out, but obviously we need to move this data along underneath the headings. So I'm just going to go back in to the design view, and I'm going to move these elements over. And as we did before, if you click on the big handle, we can move each one over, and we can see that actually, yeah, we might have to move that a little bit around because our double glazing options underneath there somewhere. I might need to make that bit bigger and smaller and play around with that. Oh, it's disappeared. Let's see if I can find it. Let's move sleeps there and model name there. Don't change anything inside of these detail areas under the detail headings, because this is actually bound to the fields inside of your tables. I am just going to view that just to see if my double glazing box is popping up. It's not by the looks of it. I will go and adjust that in a second. Oh, as you can see, I've clicked into like a report preview, sort of print preview option. If you do find that you've done that, you can right click and go into any of the options here. So you've got the report view, layout view, design view, print preview, view. Just go to design view and it should take you back to where you need to be. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to add these additional fields that we need inside of our report. In order to do that, we're going to click on Report Design, and you'll see that we've got all of these tools up here inside the controls area. We've got labels, we've got text box input areas, we've got buttons, we've got tab control, so you can have tabbed forms and reports and so on. But we're just interested in this instance into the text boxes and the labels. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the label in for by clicking on it, and we're going to drag it out, and we're going to put a label in for the number of models. So if we can go in here, I'm going to type in total number of models. And I'm just going to align that a little bit better to the other ones. And then I'm going to do the same for the total number with double glazing. So I'm going to do total with deglazing. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to go up to the text box and we're going to drag some text box in. If I drag that one in there, and then I'm going to go and add another one over here. Now notice these are unbound, but also notice that these have dragged in their own little labels. See text box 17, I'm just going to drag the handle there. If you don't want the label, you can see if I click on the unbound here, text box, input box, and move that around, the little label moves with it. But if I drag the little square on the top, it moves independently. But we don't need those labels, so let's get rid of them. So I'm just going to click on the label itself, press delete, gets rid of it, and do the same for this one here. Now notice, as I say, that these are unbound, so they're not actually linked to anything or any field inside of our database. And we want to actually make that link happen. So the first thing we need to do is some form of sum or calculation or count of the total number of the models that the manufacturer has. So the best way to do that is go inside of here, and we're going to make this text box equal something, a little bit like we do in Excel. We're going to make the cell inside of Excel make it do something. We always put in the equal sign, and then it's going to do an operation or show something or do a calculation. It's the same thing in Access. We're going to put in here equals. So this text box is going to equal what? Now we want to count the number of manufacturer models that there are. So what we're going to do in here is going to go equals, and then we're going to type in count. And then what are we going to count? So we need to go inside of our parentheses, and then we're going to do square bracket, and then we're going, like we did in the queries earlier on, we're going to target a specific thing. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to count the model names. So what that's going to do is it's going to look at whatever comes out over here, and as it goes through the loops, it's going to count them, and it's going to tell us how many we've got. So I'm going to type in exactly as it is, model underscore name. I'm going to close that square bracket, and then I'm going to close the parentheses. As before, we're going to go back, going to check and see if it worked. So click on the view, and we can see that that's counted 4. That doesn't look right to me, because we know that Swallow should only have 2. Barnaby should have 1, and Leisure Seeker should only have 1. So we know we've got a bit of a problem. Let's go back and have a check. So we're counting the model name. So we're looking in here, and I can see the reason that it's doing 4 is because if I view that, we've got 4 different models. And what's happening is this, we're putting the information inside the detail. Look, it's going for 1 for each one of them, but we want to have it inside of the manufacturer. We want to know how many of that manufacturer has that many models. So let's go back in, and I can probably tell you now that we need to move this into this heading here. Okay, so if I drag it up into there and then view that, we can see that, yep, it's now put it aside the manufacturer name, and we've now done a count of the number of models underneath the manufacturer heading. Again, Leisure Seeker only has 1, and then Swallow we can see has 2. So I'm just going to show you that again. So this is going to count up the number of models that are in this part of the actual report, because each one will display the manufacturer, and then it's going to list all of them underneath the manufacturer, and this is going to count how many it's listed. Okay, so this is telling me that I need to move this up as well, because I need to make sure that I'm counting the number of them, the total number, that have double glazing. So this is where we're going to go in and we're going to add another calculation. We're going to put in here equals, and then we're going to do sum. So we're going to add, and we're going to do our parentheses, and then we're going to type in if, and then we're going to do our open brackets, because we're doing like an if statement again. Oh, I've missed one of my I's. So if, and then what am I going to look at? What do I need to check? What do I need to get the value from? So I'm going to look at if, and I'm going to open my square bracket, and then I'm going to look at double, and I haven't put an underscore in my labeling here, so I've just noticed that. So I'm just going to put the space, because I didn't put any underscores, glazing, with a question mark at the end. And then I'm going to go my square bracket. So that's the field that I'm going to look at. If that is equal to yes, so I'm going to type in here yes, then, so there's my comma, I want to put 1. Else, I want to put 0, and then I'm going to close my parentheses. Now what that's doing is it's saying, okay, if there is one that has got double glazing, we're going to put the value of 1, and then because we're putting sum at the beginning of this statement here, it's going to add up all of the number ones that we've got. It's not going to add, well, it will add the zeros, but it won't actually increase our number. But overall, it will tell us the number, total value of models that do have double glazing. So let's run that. Let's see how that looks inside of our report. And we can see there, yep, so we've got 1 because that one's got double glazing, and then we can see here we've only got 1 that's got double glazing. Now I did say I was going to sort that tick box out, didn't I? So I'm going to go back in and make sure that that's showing up as well. Now if it has gone for whatever reason, what we can do is we can go up here to existing fields. If you click on that, you can see all of the list of all the things that we've got available in the tables that we've chosen. If I just click and drag double glazing over and pop him down here, you can see we've got our tick box there and the label again. So we're just going to get rid of the label. I'm going to move our tick box over, and we're going to click on view. And there you go, we can see that double glazing ticks for yeses and zeros, or no tick box for no. And that works out about right there. So I am just going to make sure that I've got all of my spellings and all of my labels done, because we can get points for having the appropriate labeling on there. So making sure that it's named properly. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to double click on there, manufacturer, yep, and model, let's make that capital M, and we've got that there, yep, that there, we're happy with that. And we know that it should fit all on one page as well. So I'm just going to click on here, I'm going to right click and save it, and I'm going to close that. And now, as I said, we need to make sure we've got the right prefix here, so I'm just going to right click and I'm going to rename. So if you do accidentally save one of your tables or anything like that, just right click on it once it's closed and saved, and then you should be able to update the actual name. So we're going to put in here RPT underscore manufacturer and model. So now we've got that there, that should allow us to have hopefully top marks on that side of the question. You will be asked to provide a PDF of your report. Now, some people just think screenshot that, fantastic, job done. But what you need to do, there are a few ways to achieve this, is you can right click on here and you can export and then export as PDF, or you can go up to external data, and then you've got the option here to export as PDF. So I'm just going to show you how that works. If I click on export as PDF, it's going to ask me where you want to save it. So I'm just going to save it into my documents for now. Actually, what I'll do is I'll save it so I know exactly where it's going. We'll save it to my May 23 folder. Stick a new folder there. Report. PDF. I'm going to go inside that folder, and I'm going to then click on publish, and that should output the PDF for me. So I'm just going to click on close to show the steps, and then I'm just going to drag into the screen for you.